It's funny. We talked about last week about being chickens, and I feel like I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but hey, glad to have you here. This isn't about arrival, it's about the choice to stay right here and right now. Right in the middle of the mess, right in the middle of all the chaos and the confusion and the running around like a chicken with your head cut off. If you feel that way today, feel free to message. Yeah, me too. I know a lot of us are going through it because we don't win by escaping the hard part. We don't just sidestep all the difficulties in life and somehow still call that a win. We win by walking through it. I've said this so many times before, and I'll say it again. The problem with breakthrough is the breaking and the through. Everybody wants to be broken through. Okay. They want to be at the end. Everybody wants to be at the top of the mountain, planting the flag, talking about all the great stuff they're doing, but nobody wants to be in the through. Not really. But in the through is where we win together, where we truly come together in our struggles, in our messy middle, and we make the impact on our lives, on others' lives, on the people around us, and on all of the things that we're meant to do, called to do, and can do in this world. And I want that so much for you today. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Steve Kidd. I'm a third generation minister, international best-selling author of now 39 books and counting. I help people write, publish, market their books to bestseller, and everything that goes in between that, and everything that goes on beyond that as well. But what I really do is I'm really actually your visibility architect. And really, a clearer word on that would be I'm really your clarity architect, because visibility is actually an outcome of clarity. Okay, kind of like bacon is delicious, but that's an outcome of you tasting it. Do you understand what I'm saying by that? I know I went a little wacko on that, but do you get what I mean by that? Visibility is absolutely what you want. Just like, and you don't have to use bacon. I happen to really like bacon, but just like when you're hungry, you eat. And tasting the food is kind of like the bonus. It's kind of like the thing that makes eating worth, because if it wasn't for it, if it wasn't for the taste part of that, then what we would actually end up doing is we just have some kind of green tab that we'd take that would give us the appropriate calorie count for the day. And then we'd just move on. And that would be all that we do. But because we want to taste the deliciousness of it, and clarity is the deliciousness of it, the outcome will be that you'll be visible. And the outcome of visibility is that you'll be valuable. But it begins in the deliciousness of clarity. Clarity is powerful. Clarity is the thing that will change your world, and can, when you don't have it, especially rule your world and make you, feel like a king when you've got it. Feel like you're just so totally in lack and want and need and wish and hope when you don't have it. Clarity is powerful. Clarity, I don't know if it trumps everything, but it's definitely one of the kings, one of the rulers of this universe, especially of success. Successful people are clear. They know who they are. Successful people, this is where, and some of you that know me well, you've heard me before many times, diss the concept of an elevator pitch. Because let's be honest, how many elevator rides are really long enough that you could really pitch somebody properly? Okay. And secondarily, how many elevators are really comfortable enough that if you were standing next to, insert the person here, one of the guys from Shark Tank, whomever, all right, Oprah, Elon Musk, some oil tycoon from Saudi Arabia, you're in an elevator in Dubai next to, a guy whose company is making 20, 50, 300, 500,000 or 500 million, $20 billion, somebody that has a net worth of $100 billion, whatever that person is that you envision when you think of giving this elevator pitch. How uncomfortable is it to actually, okay, so say you're standing next to, last I looked, Elon Musk was still number one as far as, overall gross worth, at least in the US. And, say you're standing next to him. How comfortable are you really turning and saying, hey, while I've got you here real quick, let me hit you with my elevator pitch? Or even better yet, just be so cool with it that you just turn around and go, hi, I know exactly what you're looking for because what I do is. Now, if you're that cool and comfortable and you've got it down to that pat, I'm proud of you. And that's where clarity comes in, because when you are clear enough, you can do that. Clarity allows you to hone it down to the point where you can say in 10, 15, 30 seconds, the thing that, let's face it, most of us, a lot of people, and I was thinking, even as I was saying that, that's where I paused, of all the radio interviews I've done, because it's fun and funny at the same time. Because my intro, everybody always asks me, it's like, do you have a set format for what the interview is going to be? And I'm like, no, we're going to actually have a conversation. I actually want to get to know you and expose to the world who you are, what you do, and the coolness that is you. How do you pre-program that? I can know some things about you, but the best things are going to come in the discovery of you. And then if you've seen me, I've interviewed Dr. Noah St. John. I think the last interview that I did like a couple of weeks ago, I think that was the 4th. It might have even been the 5th time I've interviewed Dr. Noah. Okay. So there's a whole different intro to somebody that I've known that long and been that long. And if you go way back 10 and a half years ago now to almost the first whole year, but for sure, definitely the first 6 months, 90+% of those people were all my friends and people from my virtual digital Rolodex. And they were people that I've known for decades. Okay. Dr. Joy was on the show. I've known Dr. Joy since I was in 3rd grade. I'm 58 for those of you that somehow have missed me saying that a million zillion times. What I'm saying is we've met. I stayed at his house. Him and his wife are my godparents. Okay. So when I interviewed him, it was a totally different thing. Even more so than that, if you dig through somewhere in the messy middle of all of those 10 years, going back probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, I interviewed my dad. I've known my dad literally my whole life. Okay. And we're really close too. That's a totally different kind of interview. But with the typical person, it's that getting to know them that creates that clarity, that brings it through. But the reason why I brought all that up, I was actually making one point and I made a completely different point, because sometimes the rabbit trail is better than the whole sermon. You probably got more out of that than the point I'm getting ready to make. And that's that often when I start with that intro sentence that is, tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world, people struggle with that. Okay, now and I'm always giving you these random statistics because they just float around in my mind, my Excel spreadsheet brain that loves statistics and seems to hook onto them. A 3-minute interview on television is actually considered to be a prime real estate interview. If you get a 3-minute interview, you're the bomb when you're talking about network or your high-end cable interviews. Okay, if you were to go on to whether you're talking MSNBC, Fox News, whatever, and one of those news stations, and I'm not talking about somebody that's like on a panel for the day that gets to sit there for the whole entire show or for that whole entire segment, but I'm talking about somebody that's like promoting a book, for example. And I don't care who you are, because I've seen some very high-end celebrities with very large followings, be interviewed for their book on, on a show like that. And again, if they get about 3 minutes, that's considered prime real estate. They're somebody that needs to be worth that 3 minutes. So when somebody asks you, tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world, that's that's where your interview starts. Kind of just like if you're on stage, when you walk out and you introduce yourself. I'm pointing all the fingers at me because I'm thinking of the last live that I did. And it's kind of funny because there's an old speaking trend that says, you want to always start off with a joke and capture the people from the very beginning. And, maybe there's some accurateness to that. And I actually did that the last time I was live on stage. But when you start talking about a TED Talk stage, you start talking about that 18 minutes. You're talking about precious and prime real estate. When you even start talking about the lives that I'm doing and the fact that I'm going to drone on to you for 30 to 45 minutes, that hook, that first few seconds is still powerful. And I kind of blew it. I mean, those of you that watched second one, you saw me totally blow it because I was totally in that space of running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And maybe I blew it, maybe I didn't. Maybe that raw and realness is really what I needed to show today. I mean, it totally is absolutely me. Stylistically, it's massively me. Just like when I did my talk, I started off, quote unquote, with a joke, which was really more along the lines of, me dealing with my lack of comfort, that I was having for having been on stage, quote unquote, for the first time in about 7 years. For those of you that don't know, I'll spill the beans. I mean, you could go back and watch the whole thing. It's on my Facebook if you want to see the whole thing. I put all 18 minutes of that talk out on my Facebook when I got the video back. But the stage was about 2 steps up from the ground. And I wasn't sure whether I could make it up there. More importantly, I wasn't sure whether after getting up there, I was going to be able to safely make it down. Okay. I'm just being real with you here. Okay. I've still got some certain physical limitations, and, we're talking back in March. So even more so, every pound makes me more available and capable. But it was definitely a real thing. And there was no handrail, which, sometimes when I go upstairs, I use a handrail now. Sometimes I don't. After a long walk, I absolutely use the handrail and the post that's holding up the whole deck to get me up. All right. Cause I'm worn. All right. And the person who had gone literally just before me had not used the stage and just kind of was up in the front walking and talking around and talking to the people. And I took that as permission. Sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than to get permission. I took that as my permission. I skipped right over forgiveness, went straight to that is permission, and I did that way. And as I was standing, as I planted myself in front of the stage, in front of the people, I'm like, I started right off. I acknowledged the elephant that was only in my room that they would have never known about, that I could have, because that last guy did it. I could have just totally done it and not said anything about it. Nobody would have ever known. But now you're getting to know a little bit of Steve style. But I addressed it because it was in me. It was that pounding in my heart. And we always have that, but it's even a little bit more when you haven't been on stage for 7 years and you're like, man, what if I stumble? What if I fall? What if, because I'm wearing pants that are like 14 inches too big for me and, hacked in with a belt just as hard as I possibly can. And every time I laugh, I can feel them sliding down a little bit. And what would happen if my pants fell down in front of everybody? Okay, these are the kind of real things I'm thinking about, all right? And I was looking at that stage and I didn't go up there. And so I just acknowledged the elephant that was only in my room. Okay. There's some, real tricks here that absolutely nothing to what the title I said I was going to talk about today is, but somebody needs this really, really badly. They need this. I just know it. And so I just addressed it. I was like, I'm so glad that guy did that, because now I know I can do that. Because really, honestly, I was afraid to walk up there. And I told him why. I said, the last time I was on stage was 7 years ago. And it was at a Lisa Nichols event. And it was only supposed to be for a minute. Those of you that have ever been to a Lisa Nichols event, Lisa, when she brings somebody up on stage for a minute, it's never just a minute, okay? And in point of fact, it could be for an hour. I don't know how much of that has to do with Lisa's physical ability and how much of it has to do with she's not in tune with the people around her. I don't know. I'm not calling Lisa out on it at all, but it's just the nature of it. And there was a bunch of us on there. It wasn't just me. We were all this particular thing. We were all people who were using a particular product that a vendor that was there at the event was making donations to Lisa's teen outreach foundation that she has. And we were, all giving testimonies on it. And so, we first all came up and then everybody did their talk thing. And then Lisa asked several of us some questions. Lisa loved to call me out of groups like that and have me say things. I don't know if that's because I'm a good speaker or just because I had that diversity of being both an extremely overweight. I was like 400 and probably 40 or 50 pounds at that point, extremely overweight, old white guy, so let's cover that demographic. All right, that had nothing to do with anything. But, so anyway, I'm standing up there, and the longer we're up there, the more I can feel my legs weakening. And I'm looking over, because I was right by the stairs, and I'm looking over, and there's no handrail to those steps. And I'm really feeling the fear of, I'm not going to make it down these stairs. I'm going to literally crumble and fall down the stairs. And I've had some really bad falls. And especially at that stage in my life, there were times when I wore out enough that I would just kind of melt until I was down far enough that going the rest of the way down to the ground was the only thing left. There was no capability, not even if somebody was there to help prop me up, for my legs to literally hold me. I hope nobody's ever been through that, but and I'm going through all these. I had totally lost track. I couldn't tell you what was going on because that fear was very real and present in my life. And I was afraid of that. And fortunately, one of the people, there's an assistant of Lisa's that is so good at this kind of a thing. And she was always good about making sure that there was I hate to say it this way, but strapping young man that offered a hand to every single person coming down the steps and helping them down. And she was mindful of there not being a handrail coming down the stairs. And so that was what was going in my mind. And I acknowledged, and I told him, I'm like, I appreciate you letting me stand here in front of you rather than going up the stairs and, potentially being afraid the whole time of how am I going to get down, or worse yet, not collapsing. That's the kind of stuff that you can acknowledge. And that's where the raw and real comes in. However, and I not only am talking about it, but I did a great example of taking way too long to say a thing. Because when somebody asks you, tell us a little bit about you and how do you show up in the world, and you take the, whatever, probably the last 10 or 15 minutes that I've taken to get to this one little point, that interview's over. If it was a 3-minute interview, you're 15 minutes out in the parking lot. If it was a, stereotypical podcast interview these days, that's somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes. There are still some of them that run an hour. But normally, shorter tends to be better these days. So how do you grab the crowd? Now, the reason why I used that story is because I used it to grab the crowd and pull them in on my side and to calm myself. I went into a little bit more explanationative, expletive. No. Anyway, I explained it more. This is the week of me making up words, remember? Because I wanted you to see and understand there's the just droning on, and there's the teaching, and then there's the just using it as a thing. Okay, so that part in that talk was about a minute and a half. Okay, it took me about 10 minutes to tell you all the nuances and everything of it, because I'm here teaching you today, because I want to up-level you in your clarity, and I want you to see where it is. You liked that word, Patricia, didn't you? Okay. But that clarity allows you the ability to be able to acknowledge to the crowd in a quick way and say, hey, I'm really terrified to be here today. That's what allows you to pick up the phone. That's part of the reason why I keep telling you, pick up the phone and say, hey, I have no idea what to say today. Or, wow, I'm totally terrified to do a live. Why not admit it? What if that 5-second live allowed one person, let's not even talk about, it goes viral and it changes the whole world. I mean, there's a high probability that if you came on and did a live and said, I'm terrified to do a live, how about you? There's a good possibility that, that might get a whole bunch of likes and comments, something that raw and real. I'm not promising you it will, but it could. But it's just calling it out. You may as well say it. If you're scared of the thing, say you're scared of the thing. If you don't know how to talk, like, okay, going back a minute or two, when I can't think of whatever the word was that talks about explaining it to you, that I know there's a word for, you can just have fun with your stumbling over words. That's why sometimes you'll hear me say, and that's the drinking game for the day. Here's, I had this one person I was interviewing one time, and oh my gosh, to this day, I couldn't tell you how to pronounce their name because I pronounced it wrong every single time. I interviewed this person and this was back in the early days of the show, when the interview, it was one person for an hour. So I was on, and there's some commercial breaks in there, but, we're talking like 52 minutes of back and forth time. And every time I said that person's name, I said it wrong and a different way and never, ever got it right. Okay. And so you can either acknowledge, oh my gosh, there you go, I'm so sorry, I messed up your name again. And lean into it and be raw and real and clear. Or you can try to find this polished and perfect. Clarity isn't polished and perfect. The messy middle, the place that we come together, is the things where we all have the same similarities. Where you go, hey, wow, sometimes when Steve does a live, he wears a t-shirt and I'm wearing a t-shirt too. When you go, that painting behind Steve, I wonder what that is. How come he used to have this really awesome, looking out this really cool big city window with this great bookcase next to him. And now he just has this old country painting that, was up on the wall from, when his uncle lived here, and it's stayed there since. Well, I can tell you it's because this particular instance of StreamYard is having problems with virtual backgrounds, and I don't need any extra tech problems to go with it. I'll fumble over my words, thank you. See, all of these are the messy middle. All of these are the places we come together. It's that acknowledging where we are that allows us to meet. So when we look at that intro for ourselves, and I know by this point you're like, man, Steve, you have totally lost it. You have no idea what you're talking about. And sometimes it feels that way even for me, okay? But the truth of the matter is I am actually pretty on script to what I'm thinking. Not what I had outlined, but what I'm thinking. And that has to do with my phone ringing. No, that has to do with the clarity allows you to be able to show up as you. So that when somebody says, tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world, you don't go, well, I'm married and I have 2 kids and we live in the suburbs outside of Portland, Oregon. And, I've worked for the last 20 years for, the company that my dad started. And, what other kind of things do you want to know? Or go the totally other way with it, where you go super woo woo and you're like, when I show up in the world, I show up as a dawning phoenix flitting through the sky on gossamer wings, flying through to the soul of who you are, the transformational being, dying, longing to be swept up in the fire of cataclysmic overcome that you are predestined to live in. Now, I just made up a whole bunch of words. I'm not even totally positive that what I just said even means anything. Right? Absolutely, the person's leaving now. Either side of that fence, that's not what's going to get a person to go, hey, let me lean in here to this podcast interview and see what this person's all about. I mean, maybe if they're wacky and weird, maybe if their life story is just like, oh my gosh, this person's a total train wreck, I'm going to keep watching it. It's kind of like that. It's the worst thing I've ever seen and I can't look away. Okay, there is that element of it. But other than those extremes, we're just losing the person. If you're standing there next to Elon Musk with your elevator pitch and you turn to me and go, hi, I've always wanted to meet you. You're a really cool guy and I admire everything that you're doing. And I followed your journey since way back. And I remember the first time I saw an article about you, I must have been about 16 at the time and it really changed my life. And I wish I could remember what it was about. Anyway, I really admire you and I really love your advice on ding, elevator. There's the door. Now, do you think Elon Musk is going to be like, hey, tell me a little bit more about he might. I don't know Elon Musk, so maybe his ego would be like, you told me you're really into me, so keep telling me more wonderful things about me. Now, if you try to segue this into something about you, I'm going to leave now because I really only stayed for you to tell me more about me. I don't know the guy, okay, so I don't know. But I'm telling you that when we get that moment, and that's where the speaking it, the clarity, the raw, the real, the sharing the stuff allows you to then be ready for those moments. You see, when you're next to, and I'm just using Elon Musk because of, I don't know whether he's really even the right person you want to do to it. Maybe it's whichever one of the people that's on or been on Shark Tank would maybe be a better example. And for each person that's ever going to watch this ever across all the years that'll be out, there's people that are on Shark Tank that you like and people that you hate. It's just the nature of it. And so maybe it's more a matter of, man, if I could get a minute next to this person, I want to pitch them this thing. Well, you need to be clear on that. And that pitch isn't going to be, hey, how you doing? Shark Tank is my favorite show, and I've been watching it for like the last 10 years now, or I guess maybe is it 11 years now, and I really like it. And I remember when you invested in it, ding, floor, right? The clarity allows you to be able to, in those moments, to say, oh my gosh, I'm totally terrified. See, you can still use that element. And that's why I was including it in here. You can still use that element of identifying the terror in you. You just have to know how to use it quickly. This isn't your teaching moment, and this isn't your I need to share my whole life story moment. How many of you have been to events where the speaker or or the person who's leading the questions or whatever from the audience says, okay, now we want to get to as many people as we can, so what we don't want your whole backstory, just ask your question. Okay, it's pretty normal. Okay, if you've ever done Q&A at events, that's like Q&A time 101 for anybody that's an MC at an event doing that. All right. And if you didn't know that, add that as a feather in your hat, and remember that when you're doing your own live events. And then what invariably happens, anybody that's ever been to an event knows exactly what I'm getting ready to say. The person stands up and says, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. And let me just tell you a little bit about this real quick so that you understand what I'm meaning. And some MCs or hosts are very gracious and in not necessarily a good way, or they're very untrained, and they just let the person just go. And when you let a person like that go, I had this person on my radio show. This was several months ago. That I asked them that question: tell us a little about you and how you show up in the world. Okay, leading them that perfect opportunity to say their hook. Hi, my name's Steve Kidd. I'm a third-generation minister and international best-selling author of 39 books and counting. I've worked with over 5,000 people, helping them write, publish, market their books to bestseller, and everything that goes beyond that. But the truth is, in 40 years of being a marketing company, what I really do is I help you be clear. I'm the architect of your visibility, and your visibility comes through you being massively, powerfully clear and being able to not only know the clarity yourself, but use that clarity to powerfully impact lives. Now, it doesn't have to be that long. I can shorten that. I've done the 5-second version of that. That was kind of the longer version of it. But that's what you want to do. And when you get a chance to be able to ask a question or ask for an investment of Oprah, Elon Musk, whomever, you want to turn to them. And yeah, if you're terrified, you can acknowledge the terror. Man, I can't believe I'm here with you. I'm shaking in my boots. But I gotta tell you this thing. I promised myself if I ever saw you that I would absolutely say to you that if the world only knew. I did this at an event I was at in April. I cornered. I walked out to the guy. I mean, it wasn't like I was like, walked out to the guy in the hallway after he was done with one of his talks. And I said, I promised myself, and Molly, which was my coach at the time, and was who had invited me to the event, and was one of the people on his staff, that if I ever got a chance to talk to you, I would say exactly this. Take everything that you did in that talk, because it was amazing, and instead of using the word book, use the word bestseller. That will be, from a marketing standpoint, a night and day difference in the impact of the words that you're using. And I'll tell you, he came right back to me and said, yeah, but bestseller isn't believable. I'm like, why not? He goes, because people don't think it's achievable. I'm like, I've done it 5,000 times with 100% success. I've been doing it for 17 years. If you ever run into anybody that doesn't believe bestseller is achievable, give them my name. I mean, because it's just directly that. You see, when you're clear, when you know who you are, when that objection that's going to comes, you already know yourself and you know what to do with that. That's the way life is. That's what clarity brings to you. So I want to recap, because I've covered a whole bunch of stuff and you don't know any of all of what I actually did very well formatted, and I just whittled off to you in crazy Steve world. You need to know who you are clearly. You need to speak it clearly, because you need to show up in the messy middle. The messy middle is that fear that you have. But in the messy middle is not the place that you live. The clarity is where you live. Yeah, you got one shot, one opportunity, to quote the song. You see, we all live in the messy middle. The messy middle is where we come together. When we can acknowledge our faults, our flaws, the people that are in the other room making noise. When, we can acknowledge the sound of the dog scratching on the door, which she didn't do during this live, but she's done. We've been there before. That's commonality between all of us. That's the messy middle. That's where we come together. When we can openly share our pain, when we can talk about, it hasn't always been this way. There were times when I haven't been comfortable sharing my voice. I've shared those with you. That's the messy middle. But the clarity allows you to speak in the messy middle, to connect from the messy middle, and to be clear so that you make the impact when the time for the impact is. To not go on for 20 minutes, and at the end of the 20 minutes, like that person I was talking about in the interview, still not even be done with your "hi, my name is." I mean, what's going to happen is the interview is going to do just exactly what I did. I said, well, I really appreciate that. And thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today. I had to literally interrupt the person when he took a breath, close it down. And that in and of itself is an interview that I'm going to have to edit down to about half of it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Going back to Patricia's, you get one shot, one opportunity. You get all of this time to be clear and to prepare, so that if your name gets called to make the shot from half court to win $1 million or 100,000 or whatever, that you got that chance. Because you've already gotten clear. This is exactly what I have to do in order to be able to get the ball in from, the other side of the court. If I get in front of Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Tony Robbins, the Sultan of Sudan, whatever. I spent the time to be clear so I can acknowledge my messy middle, but then I move on to my clarity. Do you see the points there? We connect in that messy middle, and being real enough to be able to say, oh, terrified to be here in front of you, but I'm so glad I get a chance to. Let me say to you real quickly, and then say it to them real quickly. See, I acknowledged that and brought us together in the messy middle, but then I went back to my point. I've always wanted to tell you that thing. I appreciate, just like I said with that guy, everything you said was spot on. But imagine if. What would be the impact if, I think is actually the words I used. You used the words bestseller rather than just the word book. And then be clear enough to be able to say, when they say, well, that's not believable, why it is believable, or why they need you to help them learn that it is believable. So the messy middle is where we come together. Our breakthrough, the thing we know that they don't, is what we're here to give them, and being able to simply and easily understand how to share that with them, offer that to them, and show them, no, if you step there, that rock isn't stable and you're going to fall back in the water. Step over here. Those are the ways that we help each other. And we come together and we all win. Because winning your way doesn't mean that the other person loses. It means you win and you help empower them win too. I know I covered a lot today. I crammed what should have been about 12 lives into about 40 minutes. And I appreciate you going on all of this journey with me because I appreciate you. You're amazing. You're incredible. If you need that clarity for your intro, clarity for your messy middle, clarity for whatever, go to AskSteveKidd.com, grab a time on my calendar, and let's get you clear today. Or drop the word clarity and I'll contact you directly. Or DM me the word clarity if you're afraid and I'll get with you and we'll get you clear. I appreciate you. Thanks for being with me here today. And I hope you have a great week.